David Howell is my guest today for the first installment of our holiday summit. And it's just great to have you back. You're obviously a recurring guest on the podcast, and it's awesome to have you here, especially at this time of year. So we just finished the awesome Labor Day weekend. I hope everybody had a great last hurrah of sorts. Definitely dropped the clutch the second we hit work yesterday. The second our rear ends hit the chair or we stood at our desks, right? That means a lot of different things for a lot of different people in specialty markets. But I will tell you one thing for sure. Labor Day being over does not mean that people can't wear white denim in our world, right, David?
That's right.
So that's what we're here to do today, is to have experts like David help us look around the corners, help us understand the best way that we can deliver value and just a great experience to our consumers as they continue their really interesting migration that they've been in all year. So with that, David, would you mind giving a little bit of background on yourself and your awesome business, and then we'll drop into the questions that I have for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you I appreciate the time. I'm glad everybody's joining. It is definitely going to be a very interesting holiday season, both for all manufacturers and retailers today. So the world we're in is definitely changing, and it's so dynamic. So here at Howell & Associates, I left a law firm about 3 years ago, started my own agency. We're kind of a boutique agency, but at the same time, kind of a traditional brand protection, channel compliance, kind of the A to Z nuts, from building that foundation, from all your policies, your procedures, any agreements, all the way through investigations and from map monitoring. So just a little bit of everything, where I like to think, if one person would say, well, one word, what do you do? It's strategy, right? We want to solve your problems. We want to take a look ahead and try to make some educated assumptions on where you're going to be based on what's going on today. And I think that's what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah, and before we go there, I just want to ask, can you give us just a quick overview on the types of clients that you serve? This is very important because I think people in our audience need to hear that you are for them and not just for Fortune 500, although you've done plenty of work there as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of irony where, everybody always scrambles for that big Fortune 500 clients. I would rather have the up and coming, the smaller. So I work for smaller supplemental companies, to clothing manufacturers that is in every store that we talk about today, to, some of the highest in running shoes, to some of the starting small little shoes that are flip-flops, to, again, just about any industry, car, automotive parts, to pocket knives, to headlamps, flashlights. It seems to be, outdoor and travel and recreational seems to be the majority of the clients that kind of really are coming looking for this type of thing. I think it's because of the trendiest nature of it. It's a small, easy item to possibly put into distribution or traditional retail arbitrage. And also when you get the smaller accounts, where I work for, one of the largest running shoes in the world, you think about 10% deviation off price hurts them, but it doesn't hurt them nothing like the company that is starting out, that's been around for 5 years. That's detrimental to their business. The rogue distribution's detrimental to their business, and that traditional retail arbitrage. So it's a whole gamut of different clients. And we're, being a boutique agency and being the founding partner, I have a team behind me, but being the founding partner, I like having the ability finally in my career to engage any client at any level, no matter what they need, no matter what price point or budgetary constraints. It allows me now to go to them and go, okay, we can work within that.
That's awesome and very good to hear. So I'm going to put my Captain Obvious hat on here. E-commerce sales are up 55% year over year for the first 7 months of 2020, and online sales are slated to surpass the total online sales in 2019 by October 5th, just around the corner, but that is well before traditional holiday season. And these numbers equate to a 10-year increase in e-commerce that's happened over COVID in just a matter of months. So the great acceleration has happened. So I think that that's a great place for us to start, because obviously we have a consumer who has been tethered to their browser, has found a lot of, I think, value and kind of new discovery, new loyalties, researching and buying from brands online. And now here we are at the most important stretch of the year. For many of us, it's make or break. So I'll just go ahead and tee this up by giving the quote that you have said to me in every single interview we've done. Hope for the best, plan for the best, but plan for the worst as well. Hope is not a strategy is another fantastic one. But tell us what we need to know in terms of making this extremely relevant to the span of time between Labor Day 2020 and Holiday 2020. So where are your clients in all of this?
So it's a great question. I think my clients, as much as I'm trying to corral them in, right, to have a good strategy, I think they're still a little bit all over the place. And I think that that's probably a pretty good echo to the majority of brands and manufacturers out there, as well as the retailers that support them. And I'm talking more of the traditional brick and mortar retailers. We'll dive into the e-commerce, obviously. But I think clients now are looking at this going, what the heck happened in 2020? Okay. We had the pandemic, we have an election year, we have global unrest with, who do we like in this market? Who do we like in manufacturing? Should we move? And I have clients that are a little bit with a big question mark going, what should we do? Where should we go? And there's a few aspects of that I'll touch on very briefly because I know we're under time constraint here. And the one thing you love about me, Kristin, is I could talk forever. So I'll try to pull back. But when you look at what's going on, we also have, I've been doing webinars and speaking on this topic and writing articles on the, kind of the retail Armageddon, right, or apocalypse. And that was 3 or 4 years ago. Well, if there's anything that really kind of put the nail in the coffin, it probably was this pandemic that we're going through. I was just recently at the mall. Half the mall is closed down. Stores are empty. And we had here in the Idaho market, we had a very thriving mall. It's one of the few places in America where we still had a traditional mall. Every store was open. Every kiosk was full. Now it's not. And the stores that are open have very limited who can go in, the distancing, and then also what their hours are. So if we take that, coupled with the pandemic, coupled with distribution issues, manufacturing issues, these types of things, now we're looking at 2020 e-commerce time, whether we talk about through Prime Day all the way through Black Friday, through Cyber Monday, or that's probably all going to be combined into one. We're now looking at all these stores that went out of business just recently, whether it was Pier 1s, the Toys R Us, JCPenney's, Sears, all these things that kind of went through. That's a lot of retail arbitrage. That's a lot of buying low and flooding the market with this on those e-commerce platforms, whether it's Amazon, eBay, or a direct e-commerce or a Facebook ad or whatever it looks like. That's going to disrupt that channel. So you have all these craziness going on with, do I have enough product? Do I have enough manufacturing? Is my distribution going to be tight? Are we going to have a resurgence of the pandemic? And now I got all this rogue product that went onto the marketplace. What's that going to do to my channel? And how do I clean that up? So if I do get things ramped up, that's where we are. And then you couple that with the worst case, which is what if we have another huge uptick in this pandemic where Amazon shuts down or essential items are only shipped? What does that look like, and how do we prepare for that?
Right. And so it's basically, I don't think anybody has kind of gone back to the pre-COVID playbook, but I think what you're stressing is that take everything that you've learned and anticipate even more and do everything you can to kind of feather your nest to manage, I think, a soft landing on a number of different fronts. One of the things I think that you and I talked about in our multiple rehearsals here really was about emphasizing, obviously you're all about channel cleanup, but the channels have, I think, shifted a little bit. And this is a really important one to hit. So I'd love to have you talk a little bit about, talking about the importance of Amazon, but maybe other marketplaces as well, or important social media channels that have just invested a lot in commerce solutions. Yeah. So can you speak a little bit about how your business has evolved in that way in the past couple of weeks, I think?
I think that's great. Weeks is probably pretty good. Can't predict much past that, right? If you back up a little bit, traditional brand protection, or where I started 20 years ago in this industry, it was a domain name, right? And then it migrated very quickly. So brand protection today, we kind of call it channel compliance, and they're both the same. And it really goes to just keeping up, who's doing bad faith to your brand, and what does that look like? So when we talk about what things were 5 weeks ago and what we're looking at today, we're 5 weeks ago, 5 months ago, it was kind of really Amazon. Amazon was the big player. We knew last year, 65%, 70% of all product inquiries, pricing, things like that, people would start on Amazon. I think you roughly told me a statistic yesterday in the 80% now on kind of where we're at. That tells you that Amazon's still a big player. But a few months ago, that put a wrench in kind of a kink in everybody, because Amazon wouldn't take any product into FBA. whatever was in FBA was kind of sold out. And then they were only simply sending essential items.
Right.
I understand that's a business decision, but now a lot of my manufacturers kind of, I won't say had all their eggs in one basket, but they had a lot of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So now what do we look like? And if you're managing your FBA, because we know product that's sitting in an Amazon warehouse and is sitting there, you're paying a premium for that. So you're going to try to manage that very closely, right? You're not going to have thousands of items on there. Maybe you're managing pretty good with your own fulfillment. That's what a lot of my clients really, oh my gosh, what happened? I only had 100 in there. These sold out like that. I can't get anything in for 60 days.
Right.
Became an issue. So what did I recommend? Diversify, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at your own e-commerce. Let's go back 20 years, 15 years and say, build out your own e-commerce and get your traditional, selling platform going. Take a look at maybe eBay. Take a look at another type of marketplace, maybe that is a good partner. REI builds up their marketplace. Maybe you start pushing on that, or Target looks at a marketplace. But then it goes to what your last point was, is the social media aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think social media is very important because we all know, especially with the shut-in, with a lot of people being at home, we got stimulus checks, everybody's looking to spend money. That products that are out there, consumers are still going to buy. Human nature dictates I want to buy, right? I want something new. You and I were just talking about our new MacBooks, right?
Yes.
So we kind of like that, right? Well, what does that look like in today's world when you're on social media and thinking of something? It's called kind of the filter bubble, right? If I look at one thing on Facebook, all of a sudden the feeds start pushing stuff to me.
Right.
The majority of my clients today have Facebook ads that are fraudulent. Whether it's counterfeit or just plain fraudulent, directing to sites that look so good to the direct e-commerce, because that's what the consumer's being told. If you can't find it on Amazon, go to direct commerce, right? Because we'll have that. Well, now you got a Facebook ad directing you to a water bottle, or directing you to a backpack, or a generator, whatever the case may be. And the damage is already done, because I could shut those down and clean those up, but it's kind of a reactive posture. And consumers are using PayPal, or they're using these things that think they're protected, and they're not. So a lot of these scammers send you a pin in the mail with a tracking information. And then when I want to know where my $230 order is, I file a claim with PayPal, and PayPal goes, well, it looks like you had tracking and it was delivered. So now you're done. They're gone. And it's happening every single day. I can't even, anything I would tell you, you probably wouldn't believe it unless I really showed it to you. That if I went on Facebook right now and typed in a water bottle, that's my client, or typed in a backpack, that's my client, I probably am going to find ad to commerce that's directing to a counterfeit or just a fraudulent site. And the brands pay for that.
Right.
Facebook doesn't pay for that. Facebook doesn't say, oh, so my bad, or we were wrong. The brand integrity goes, I ordered this from XYZ. I didn't get it from XYZ.
And our brands, especially, have worked so hard to build that loyalty and that trust across platforms. So it sounds like, I'm not saying it's brand new, but it's definitely something that I think is blossoming, unfortunately, right now. What are some steps that brands can take to try and mitigate this? Because ultimately, we don't want to lose the trust of the consumer right now, because the consumers are looking, they have open loyalty, right? And they're looking for like a frictionless or an ethically aligned experience. That's what they're being, trained to have, and that's what they're looking for. So if we have something like this happen, it could be extremely detrimental.
So is that when I plug myself, or go like this and go right here? No, I'm joking. Really, what you should do is have a good e-commerce strategy, right? So you have to take a look and understand, when I talk about the foundation, we got to take a look and say, okay, what are your agreements and policies you have in place? What's your authorized distributors and your authorized resellers? And take a look at that, and anything that's not in there, and any venue, whether it's social media or AdWords or anything like that, any venue that is not authorized, or we do not have that in marketing, we need to go after and monitor it. And we need to listen to our consumers, listen to internally, take a look at monitoring software, and then enforce on that. So it is a cost, but I think brand integrity is something that's so difficult to build up that it can be lost and so fragile. And I can guarantee you, whoever's listening today, if you have your number one competitor, they're banking on your failure. They're banking on you having holes in that channel or that consumer confidence issue, so they could pick up that slack. right? When you talk about Nike and Adidas that are out there, right? If one leaves a platform, the other capitalizes on it, right? If one goes into this venue, the other's going to piggyback off of that, right? And it doesn't mean they're enemies. It just means that if there's a void, someone's going to fill that. So don't let bad faith players out there monopolize on that. And a lot of people say, you know, politically aside, right? Never let a good tragedy go to waste, right? And unfortunately, in every major tragedy we had in at least North America, whether it was earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, or a pandemic, bad faith players, people are going to rip you off. They're going to scam you, and they're going to take advantage of any goodwill that's out there, and they're going to capitalize on that. And we're seeing that online today more than anything that I've seen in a very long time.
I wonder if it's a good idea to have brands actually position on their homepage or, you know, through their funnels, not to be looking for, you know, ads on Facebook, or saying like, we do not have storefronts on Facebook, so don't buy from there. I wonder if there's something the brand level can take on.
I think that's a good point, because I think that it really comes down, if you really truly want to protect your brand, you know, having someone like you or me around is important, but it's probably more important to educate your consumer base, right? Really go out there. And what you're talking about is a little bit of like a where to buy page, right? Where it's like, here's where our authorized sellers are. Anything over here, please contact us, or raise an eyebrow at it. And also understand the old analogy, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Understand that if I'm a Fall Raven backpack, I'm never going to sell it 70% off. I'm just not going to, because we're a tier brand and we have product quality, and we also have that integrity that our product just doesn't go 70% off. So if it is, let us know. We'll validate it for you, or just go to one of the people that we tell you. So educate your consumers, both on unauthorized sales, but also on counterfeit, right?
I think that's fantastic. Okay, well, let's continue to move through this. One of the other things that we researched to talk about today was just the fact that, as you talked about earlier, we know that consumers are not going to kind of cozy up and like grab their eggnog at the, you know, locals night or Noel night, obviously. Like, we're still compromised in terms of physical retail and retail experiences right now, but click and collect is still super strong. And I would love to get your take on anything that you're seeing within your incredible client roster around ways that brands are working with retailers to really try and create that connection and that loyalty, and hopefully that life or status with consumers. So it isn't just a transactional, I'm going to go pick this up.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you know, it's all about marketing and messaging. We take a look, and I have a lot of my clients, because in the outdoor industry quite a bit, I have a lot of my clients that have the REI, you know, kind of brick and mortar, and where REI is an extremely good faith player. I really respect that as a brick and mortar as well as an e-commerce. What does Black Friday look like? The people who love to go shopping on Black Friday. Well, now if you have social distancing in effect, you have only so many people can go in the store, and then you couple that with a lot of people who are like, I'm just not going to do that. How does a good REI retailer tied with a good brand, whether it be North Face or Black Diamond or Fall Raven, still drive that sale where it's not necessarily an Amazon, but it's supporting that retailer? And I think it comes down to, you know, co-op marketing. I see a lot of that going on. Special, I don't want to really hesitate to special pricing, because that's collusion or antitrust issues, but it's more of running these specials with the brick and mortar to, you know, pick up in store, free shipping, free returns, all these different type curbside pickup. You're really talking to and engaging with the consumer to say, listen, we're here for you, both as the brand manufacturer and as the retailer. And that goes even so far as even, you know, you look at Amazon, and we paint Amazon as a bad player a lot of times, but they're good for what they're good for. They're trying to embrace this a little bit too. They moved Prime Day out. They're trying to coexist with a lot of that, which ironically, I saw your October 5th, that might coexist, commingle right with Prime Day to see that big uptick in sales. But they're willing to, you know, curbside pickup at certain locations, curbside drop off for exchanges. People are adjusting now, and I think it comes down to communication and embracing, having the manufacturer, instead of so much, and we talk about education from where not to buy, what about that also education to where to buy? And here's our good faith partners, and we're going to do everything in our power to make it right for you, get you the right products that you're comfortable with, and still, you know, make you happy, because a consumer happy and consumer confidence is so important.
And one of the things that I just really can't emphasize enough is ultimately the brands through content and through an exceptional like experience of research and discovery online, make that possible. So if the consumer chooses to go and do, click and collect in their local shop, or, chooses to buy on Amazon or chooses to buy from the brand, wherever they choose to buy from, that consumer needs to be empowered by the brand. The brand indoctrinates them, enrolls them, if you will, emotionally, and then ultimately it erases the channels. And talk a little bit about your take on getting through the election and the stimulus checks and what you anticipate might happen here with the travel market or any travel-oriented product, which definitely ties into the active outdoor lifestyle market in a big way.
No, that's great. So I have a lot of clients that are really tied to travel, and they've taken roughly 80%, 70% hit. And it's almost like, what's that end in sight? What's that look like, right? I'm a firm believer that human nature is always going to dictate that we can be cooped up for so long, but eventually we got to spread our wings and fly, right? So once this is over with, again, all politics aside, but hopefully not November 4th, all this is behind us, right? But we'll see.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, again, I think that, things are obviously played up. We need to be protected. We need to be good stewards. I'm not going to knock that. But I think that once this is done, we get past this election, we get past some of the stimulus stuff. We on the verge of whether it's a vaccination or something that's going to help us do this. Everybody is going to go nuts to Trump. Okay. And I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand. I'm already looking at it. Matter of fact, today I was talking about cruise lines and cruising. Well, those are starting to open up here in the next month, and they're going to start going. And by first part of next year, we're going to be full floor really going into that again. So what does that mean? I flew to Aruba 2 weeks ago. So sorry if everybody hates me for saying that, but it was my last time taking vacation with my 17-year-olds. But we were 9 people on a plane all the way down to Aruba. I can tell you this, when this is done, it will not be like that. Yeah. It'll be 9 people hoping somebody misses their flight, right? So what does that mean? Like, we need to prepare for that. So we need to make sure manufacturing's still good. We need to understand that when stimulus checks are going to start coming again, which I believe they are, I think they're talking about that, people are still going to spend. They're still going to buy money, or still going to spend that money and buy products that they're looking for. So we have a holiday season coming up. You can't tell me I don't believe we're in a recession. I don't believe that people are literally sitting here going, well, I'm wrenching up my wallet. I think people are sitting here looking, going, I just don't want to go to the store right now and buy something. Or I don't want to go right here. And maybe the Nintendo Switch wasn't on Amazon because they've been sold out. I think a lot of that's going to change when we get to the closer to the holiday. People are going to buy. So we need to anticipate, again, hope for the best, but plan for the worst, right? So what's the best? That we need to get manufacturing out there. We need to get products in the hands, in front of people, do the right marketing and advertising, and know that consumers are still going to buy products. I know I'm going to shop on the holiday season, and hopefully I don't have to wear a mask and go to a brick and mortar, which would drive me to go shop online. So let's prepare for that. If that's the mindset of America, let's prepare for that.
And one of the ways I know that your clients and mine and a few others who I've spoken with in our network have definitely talked about trying to shift the focus to moving last year's product. Do you have anything you'd like to share on that front?
I think it is. For a lot of the I guess you would call it, I won't want to say trendy, but at least definitely in the apparel or things of that nature, there was a time where right now we'd be really looking at springtime. Well, there's a lot of product that's been left over or in distribution. And a lot of times they're just saying, you know what? We still have all this product. The consumer still likes it. We don't need to come out with colors or with different ones because manufacturing's been shut down. So let's not worry about the trends. Let's just worry about the product itself. So, a fall ribbon Conkin backpack is still a gorgeous backpack that's very trendy. No, maybe it's not in a rainbow color or star color or a mountain-esque new color that they're coming out, but there's still 50 other colors out there that are still in distribution. So let's make sure we get those in there, get it out of distribution, into the retailers, into the marketplaces, and let's still push that. And it's not so much, I don't want people to think you're duping consumers by saying, oh yeah, this isn't new, but still go with it. It's not. It's still a good product. And you don't have to always have something new, right? We're all not Gucci, Versace, listening to Paris and France and what the runway models are running to say that's what you have to wear. It's a backpack that's still quality and good, and it's still amazing. It's still a great pair of shoes. Let's just go out there, buy them. Let's face 2021, and let's have a good time and see what happens next year for new colors or new trends or new models and things of that nature. Let's not get stuck up on the little things.
Well, and one of the things that I think could really put some wind under that is great brand storytelling, because ultimately in specialty, our end consumer wants to wear these brands as part of their identity. Fjallraven's a great example of that, especially as they, open up and show more of their 30 plus years of heritage of eco-consciousness and just sustainable manufacturing as a Swedish company, right? Like that's a great example, actually, where you could actually, as a brand leader, build a lot of narrative around a particular product and be transparent that it is like one of our stalwart favorite products. Here's why, here's some history, so that they can discover the story and still want to wear the brand. And I think that's a really great opportunity right now as we sit here in early September and we look ahead to this journey of discovery that our consumers going to have online. So that's something that I think is great to bring up. And David, I just want to say, I think there are very few people in my world here, and you've been so helpful just in educating our world here at Channel Mastery, but you have such a pulse on the consumer through the discussions you have with so many of your clients and through everything that you do with your channel compliance and cleanup and all of the other strategy that you're providing. I feel like we can look at the headlines all day long till we're blue in the face and capture data. But really what people count on us for at Channel Mastery is making it relevant to the specialty markets. And that's exactly what you help us do. And I'm also really happy to say that David will be joining us in the Academy as a guest lecturer. We're super excited to have him there. It's a huge honor to have him in that program. But everything that we do in the Academy is about getting you every week re-engaged with where this consumer is going, because they're changing that quickly. What we saw earlier this year, with all of us getting used to our new realities as they kept happening with COVID, we're going to see that again as we go through the end of the year. We're also going to see another shift, as David pointed out in the beginning. It could be a shift where we might have to go a little bit of a curtail through for Q1, maybe not. Maybe we'll be in a position where the free-for-all that he was describing will happen. One thing I think we can really very confidently look back to and look ahead on is the fact that demand is there. Whether I'm working with SIA and talking about resorts and snow sports, or whether we're in outdoor, or whether you and I are talking about, what we talk about and nerd out on regularly, the consumer demand is there, and it's only going to grow as restrictions are lifted. So it's important that you're there and that you're engaging just the right brand fan. Don't try and please everyone. And that is really the premise of what we teach in the Academy. So I hope that you'll all check it out. It's at channelmastery.com/course or verdipr.com/course. And then follow our free content that we're going to be providing over the next three and a half weeks. Tons of webinars, new podcasts, and more Facebook Lives. We have one tomorrow and one on Friday to continue our holiday summit. Tomorrow is with Ryan Riggs of Pattern. Ryan and I first worked together at Keen. He's got an incredible company that he's working for now. And then Kelly Ramirez, who everybody loves. She's one of our most downloaded shows that we've had, joins us on Friday to talk about Prismatic's view on what we're going to be doing into holiday. So two really good, as I say, I've got 3 hitters lined up here, right?
I'm flattered to be at the front end of that, probably not the cleanup. So that's good.
Well, I just want to say thanks. Is there anything that we've forgotten to address that you feel is important for our audience today as they kind of get ready to start this sprint?
I think the most important thing is I don't want any brand to think, well, there's nothing I can do, or I've been told I can't do this, or, I had counsel say this, or another company, or I was at a company that we couldn't do anything. You always can do something. Burying your head in the sand isn't going to do anything. And we really want to, like you mentioned, and I appreciate the nice comment, but I do look at it from a consumer perspective, and I back up to the brand. Because I always said this too, if you put the consumer first, you will always be successful, because by default, by the consumer being first, you're going to make yourself first as well, right? So shift your thing. You think your distributors are the best. You think your retailers are the best. What about the consumers? Get in their head. What are they comfortable with? What do they want? And going back real quick to the Fjallraven example, because you are one of my favorite clients, I love them to death. But when you talk about all that next product, when you say the word sustainability and you talk about the existing products and some of those types of things, that by definition is exactly what we're talking about doing, right? Let's make sure that we use the products we have out there. Let's use the things. We don't have to always be so trendy and so ahead of everything. We can still just have a good product with a good consumer interaction.
I totally agree. And the work that Verde does works with this discovery, the nurturing, the conversion. And one of the reasons we're so happy to have our multi-channel marketing academy is we can reach so many more people and help them modernize through this challenge. Because ultimately, yes, it is a big challenge, and that means big opportunity. Not that we want to capitalize on people's suffering, of course, but I will say people want to hear from you. Specialty is where their favorite brands are. We carried people through the earlier part of this. Aspirationally, people look to us to engage. So it's really important that you stay in front of them with what they want and continue that storytelling and nurturing with them. So with that, David, I think that we've brought hopefully an A game to a lot of people today. Please send us in any questions, and we're happy to address those. And we're going to be turning this into a podcast with all three of the guests next week. But it would be great if you can join us live tomorrow. I believe we're at 2:30, and I think on Friday we're at noon. But you can check that at the verdepr.com blog. So thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
I am very excited to introduce Ryan Riggs to you, who is the VP of Business Development at Pattern. Welcome to the show, Ryan. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Kristin. Thanks for having me.
Well, first and foremost, tell me about Pattern and tell me about your migration to Pattern, because you and I met and worked together at Keen a few years back. And I just, going through the research process for the summit, I discovered that you had moved there, dropped in and looked at the company. It looks fascinating. So tell us about that.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's been an interesting kind of ride into the e-commerce space over the last few years. I think the joke I would say is, on paper, I'm not an e-commerce guy by nature, as I spent my career at Columbia Sportswear, Mountain Hardwear, Sorel, and Keen, leading up to an opportunity to learn the e-commerce space, and then recently getting a chance to join up with the Pattern team. I think you've probably noticed there's 3P sellers or retailers in the space, and then there's a group like Pattern. And what makes them so exciting to me is I really do see them as the premier e-commerce player in the global marketplaces, because so many of these entities and 3P sellers are focused just on the US domestic business. But Pattern is in 18 different countries now with an employee base of over 400. And, we're on Tmall, Mercado Libre, Walmart, Target. You just go down the line of where e-commerce is going and where it's growing. And the evolution from just selling product on Amazon US has gone so far beyond that now, to where it's become very exciting. They're one of the fastest growing global e-commerce companies in the world now, and one of the fastest growing companies in the United States as far as revenue and where they're going to. So I'm super excited to be able to get a chance to work on the business.
Well, and you think about this year being that McKinsey report called The Quickening. You probably saw that, where it said we've grown to 10 years, where we thought we would be in 10 years with e-commerce adoption in 3 to 5 months. So not only are you joining, a rocket ship company that's growing globally with 400 people and growing, but you're doing it during a time, and you joined right in the middle of COVID, like right in the middle of 2020, when everybody is on e-commerce, whether it's because they have to be or because they've now adopted it as a behavior. And we cover a lot of that in, the content that we create, helping our clients at Verde, and also with what we're doing in the academy. That's why we launched it, because people are just a year ago from today, completely different, right? And it's interesting to see the consumer behavior and the preferences that are happening. So you're such a great person to have on the Holiday Summit. So let's just drop right in and get into our questions, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So my first question here is really looking at, I think I'd love to hear like some of the standout shifts that you've seen, because you obviously, we're coming into COVID. I think we had an experience in data and everything that we were kind of working off of. One of the people that I've interviewed recently was a a paid search expert, and he talked about how if you're working with automation with search, you really need to be watching that closely because the data set is so different than, you know, the benchmark that they thought was going to be programmed in. And I get that that's all the tech side of it, but there's also a consumer that's driving the change that isn't matching up with that. What are you seeing with the consumer like today after Labor Day 2020?
I think some of the biggest things we see is just overall change in engagement. You know, there's been tools and services that have been out there for some time now. And I think with the ability of the consumer to still go shop in store and be presented different marketing campaigns in many different ways, the level of engagement in the tools and services that were coming through entities like Amazon weren't resonating as much as they had hoped. But that's totally changing. And things like Amazon Live, we've seen enormous amount of engagement even in this year. There was a brand, Coravin, that we work with that is wine industry filtration. And we ran Facebook Live, or excuse me, not Facebook, Amazon Live. Mm-hmm. It's funny. We were just talking about Facebook, so I think I got it stuck, right? So we ran Amazon Live with them for 7 days. And Amazon Live, you can do anything from product demonstrations to product exploration and things like that. And we saw 15,000 product reviews during a 7-day span.
Wow.
And so that engagement it varies quite a bit, because I think our analysts came back and saw kind of 1 to 2 minutes of engagement was pretty much the max, you know, before people kind of bailed off and went on to other things, as we kind of live in that like squirrel society of, you know, what's out there next, you know.
The attention span.
Oh, so much. So
tiny.
Yeah. So the ability to engage the consumer for 1 to 2 minutes and explain the product, you know, we saw during that time that we were actually running Amazon Live, we saw that we were selling more in the days following Black Friday than we actually saw unit transactions on Black Friday. So even that spike that you normally see in shopping and spending, once that engagement piece started, it picked up quite a bit.
So it humanized the process, it sounds like. And, you know, we've talked about this before, but prior to COVID, we still had upwards of like 85% of all sales happening in brick and mortar, from the numbers anyway. That's what the larger business publications were even posting. But now I think through tools like this, you're able to get that purchase validation. That might be part of the reason for that. And also we're just so used to doing video, like we trust it more now.
Yeah. The other things, that's, I think from a consumer standpoint, engagement's really picked up. From a brand standpoint, we feel like brands and companies that have really started to dive into SEO conversion management, mm-hmm. Which is interesting because a lot of people look at SEO and they think, oh, we've got somebody that does Google SEO, or we've got somebody that does, it's not the same thing on a channel like Amazon, because Google's still oriented to search, whereas Amazon's still oriented to transaction. And so the companies that have really engaged in SEO and started using automated tools like at Pattern, we have a proprietary software called Predict, where we run all of our SEO content and ad management through it. And it, not to say it dumbs it down, but it actually directionally tells us where to go to optimize conversion for our clients. And so clients that have started to implement that in the last few months have seen quite a spike in conversion overall.
That's fantastic. Before we hop off of this topic, and we will be, I think, weaving the consumer through our entire conversation, but do you have anything around kind of seeing demand changes? Because that's one thing that I think has been heartening from June forward. People definitely have reported from all of the specialty markets that we're in that there has been a good appetite for like buying product. It's just finding the product, especially in bike, it's very difficult. But what do you?
I was going to say, have you tried to have your bike serviced lately or anything like that? I had to wait 2 weeks just for a tune-up because they were selling so many bikes, and I've had friends that have tried to purchase bikes and just can't get them. So,
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at the different segments of business, and even kind of going back to March, April, there was a little bit of panic in the sports and outdoor side of the business because of Amazon's prioritization around which products they wanted to fulfill and how they wanted to fulfill them. And I think when we looked at numbers, we saw like, oh, wait, demand's going way down. And I think in certain areas like maybe luxury footwear or jackets and apparel, there was definitely some change. But overall, I think we still miss some of the numerics that we're saying. Actually, demand's there. It's just whether or not it's getting fulfilled fast enough. And at the same time we were seeing that, there wasn't a single brand that I talked to that wasn't celebrating the fact that their D2C sites were like off the charts as far as sales, and trying to explain just consumer migration was an interesting conversation. I'm like, yeah, I'm happy for you there, but do you realize it's just because the convenience of 2-day shipping from Prime has gone away, and now 7-day shipping from you is actually the quicker method. So that's where they've migrated that convenience. And so it was an interesting time to navigate those conversations too. But I do see that quite a bit of demand's gone up. And I think it's fun with Amazon data, because you can use Amazon data and category data to actually see exactly where people are shopping and what they're buying. Like bikes are up, bread makers are up. You can go down the line on, hey, maybe they're not buying that water bottle that they used to do because travel's down and people aren't, on planes and all that kind of stuff. But guess what? Kitchenware is up significantly because everyone's cooking at home, right? So it's all there if you have someone who can synthesize it and read it for you.
Right. So, that actually brings us to a point before I get into like the holiday promotions piece. I think the timing of this is actually really good for me to ask. So obviously your role is business development at Pattern. And one of the things we talked about before we hit record today was about just the role of data and how much that can really, I think, move the needle in a very impactful way for a specialty brand that maybe isn't so comfortable, like maybe they've had their playbook, right? We've talked about this for years together, but talk about how that's changed, because I think you have an interesting purview now being at this global reach level company.
Yeah, I think the anecdotal story I was sharing is just kind of like looking in past life and even in product creation and category management was, as you're sitting down each season and trying to start that creative brief process and pull data and get insight that affects where you need to go as a category director for the business that has to be planned 12 to 18 months out. You're going, what do I have to really influence that? And instead of chasing trend and trying to say, hey, what's this company over here? What have they done successfully? How do I convert that and make that work for my brand? What if you had live data? Like what if you had the substantial hub of consumer data that told you exactly what, and I'll use the case of shoes, but just what shoes were selling at what price points, which colors, in which regions, and which zip codes. Mm-hmm. Like if you could go that deep and actually provide your product team that information, what a great way to actually look at, what should be made instead of, if any former colleagues from a rep force are actually going to listen to this, I apologize, but instead of sitting in a room and asking reps what they think works and what they need for their markets and all that kind of stuff, literally having the data that says exactly what's selling in their region, around their stores, where there's not coverage as far as sales, because those are where the spikes in Amazon happen. What a great tool to have. And I think that's sort of the migration of not just Amazon being a sales tool, but being a data tool for many different departments within an outdoor company is there's a huge upside to it.
Yeah, for sure. And we're all about learning our jobs and modernizing in a new way right now. It's been really difficult to see because we see people we've worked with a super long time who have been, really, they work a certain way because that's how they're valued. And ultimately right now they're having to change a lot of that and trust a lot of new things. And I think that even just letting go of like focusing on the point of distribution versus the consumer has been really hard for people. And they're not sure like how this is all going to work, or where do I fit into this at the end of it? But really at the end of it, it is really about the consumer. And if you don't change what you're doing to be focused completely and in lockstep on that, I don't think the survival rate's going to be very high, frankly. As much as I do believe retail will come back in a powerful form, nobody knows what that is, but I think everybody wants to always gather and have an experience like that. But at the same time, that's very analog. And ultimately, as you're explaining, we have so much information, I think, to be remarkable to our consumers today. And we have to kind of let these sacred cows die, as painful as it is.
Yeah. I think kind of growing up in the outdoor industry, from my very first job on up, and, I absolutely love the industry. I mean, I'm an outdoor kid from Portland, and that just was ecstatic to get a job at Columbia Sportswear and have a chance to be there, and then where it's led after that. But I think what's happened, and the thing that I appreciate the most about the outdoor industry really is how conscientious it is about how they got their start. There's certain retailers that launched brands, and gave them a shot and bought their product, and it generationally almost that's still noted. And these relationships on point of distribution are sometimes affected by the conscientious, take on who started me and how they got me there, even if they're getting to the point of not necessarily being as relevant as they were, a decade or so ago. I do appreciate that, but it is evolving very quickly. The consumer is definitely evolving to a place of convenience. How do I get my product? Amazon's biggest competition is going to come from convenience on the Walmart side, when Walmart figures out how to leverage 4,500 retail locations around the United States, and they start shipping product within 6 hours. It's going to be where people need to access product, and whether we like it or not, it's because we all love outdoor shops. We love being taken care of. The idea of experience and being able to fit someone on a bike or put them on the right pair of skis, I think is still relevant, but the commodity type product is definitely going to be accessed other places.
Yeah, the brands that build communities around that experience that you just described, and maybe ethics, like different things that really speak to their absolute focal customer, I think will really do okay through all of this. But you're right, and you can't fight that. And that is why Walmart is launching their marketplace in their version of Prime, I guess, right? I don't know.
Right. Yep.
So let's get into that, because traditionally these larger entities we're talking about right now drive a lot of the holiday promotions, and they've trained us well, haven't they?
Yeah.
In the past few years. What do you anticipate is going to happen for, Labor Day to the end of the year? I like to just kind of put an umbrella of like holiday or kind of the sprint to the end of the year with all of these very important make or break weekends.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think people's inboxes are already getting flooded, with promotion. And, anytime you start promotion this early, you have to think that it's going to have some effect on data coming out of like the Cyber 5 days around, Black Friday and on. Is like, if people have access to start this at an earlier period of time, we just have to look at it blended throughout Q3 into Q4 and not necessarily look at that Cyber 5 capture of days and say, were we successful as in retail? Because I don't think it's going to be as reflective because of how much promotion is happening now. Mm-hmm. And obviously the promotion's happening now because we're kind of backed up with product, and nobody wants to go into March, April of next year bogged down by the product that they need to move through right now. And so we're in essence, the start to our fall winter season is going to be a little bit affected by the clearance of, spring summer product as we try to get into the kind of blend that into actually Q3, Q4. So I see a lot of that happening.
Yeah. It started over Labor Day. I
can't
believe all the emails that I got, 60, 70% off promotions. Labor
Yeah.
Day sale, as if it was something I'm supposed to recognize from last year. I don't remember seeing that last year.
Right. And it's kind of funny how Amazon still hasn't come out and announced Prime Day yet. So we're just kind of like in a holding pattern on like, okay, when is that going to happen? And how is that going to affect wherever they drop it? How is that going to affect the rest of the year in comparison to what are already kind of key dates around that Cyber 5?
Right. I read somewhere, I think it was, I can't remember, it wasn't TechCrunch, but it was Tech something this morning, that it was potentially the 5th of October. And then they were going to do their Black Friday sales, like starting, I think, the 3rd week of October.
Well, I need to get with my team because they probably know and I don't. So.
Well, and that was just like, who knows if that was speculative. It wasn't quoting anyone from Amazon. So we'll see.
Well, hopefully it comes earlier than later, because it would kind of affect what everyone's trying to plan for. Because a lot of what's happening now too is changes in Amazon fulfillment and the amount of units that they're letting brands load into the fulfilled by Amazon or FBA system. The dynamics of that going into Q3 and Q4, if you haven't planned your product injection into FBA, like if it's not happening right now, it's probably not going to happen. And you're going to actually kind of miss the second wave of being able to get more product in when your sales data starts to show the demand for more product, because they're putting caps now that make it so you have to have a really dynamic fulfillment method or a partner that can adapt to that too.
And that's going to be very interesting. And I think people, as I wrote in, kind of the first notes I sent over about our time together today, it seems like if this was last year and I was just starting to do a holiday summit after Labor Day, you guys would laugh me out of the room, right? But since it's so fluid, I think there are still opportunities to change and become better positioned. You just mentioned one, which again is a little bit Captain Hindsight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, are there any others that you recommend that especially brands can make now to be best positioned to be on offense through the rest of the year?
Well, I hope it doesn't make anybody feel bad about their strategy, but I don't think that holiday strategy exists anymore. I think it's full year strategy, and you actually get the dividends of a full year strategy happening now. Meaning, if you've dialed in, we really work through what we call an e-commerce equation at Pattern, and it focuses on traffic, conversion, and price. And those 3 buckets, if you dial those in during the year, this is the time where you not necessarily get to sit back, but you're in a position of having it ready to go. It's not the time to try to spend a lot of money to get traffic that didn't exist previously. It's not the time to all of a sudden trying to be visually present on your listings. You already need to have those going. And it's not the time to try to work on a pricing strategy and get people to abide by it. That all has to be dialed in a long time ago to be actually really kind of clicking on all cylinders through the season. And so that's a lot of what we share with our clients is throughout the year, making sure that those 3 buckets are completely dialed in. And, again, kind of going back to SEO and different things, there's so much there that brands can do. I think, even talking to a couple outdoor brands this morning, there's sometimes a little bit of a hands up kind of mentality on like, we've done what we can. And I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot more that can still be done. And you just have to make sure that you have either staffed up with people that are experts in that area, or go find the expertise and partner up with, the experts that can actually find that. And outdoor brands don't need to staff a full kind of Amazon e-commerce team and make that a priority quite yet. They can definitely find the resources to make it happen.
Right. And that poor sales VP definitely should not be shouldering that burden.
No, and it's funny. That's a really good point, Kristin, because we're starting to see the migration in the sports and outdoor companies that those responsibilities are starting to migrate over to more of a global e-commerce lead inside a company, rather than the VP of sales trying to shoulder, actually getting products sold and then working on e-commerce channel strategy at the same time. You know, it's not, for the most part, it's not their expertise. And, you know, I think that's fair to say, but, you know, migrating it to the channels and syncing it up and creating synergies with both your D2C site and across all of your .com strategies, whether it's Walmart, Target, Backcountry, whoever it is, syncing it up and making sure that you have a full kind of cohesive story.
Right. And okay, one thing I do have to ask, because it's the marketer in me, and you mentioned Amazon Live. I mean, that might be something that you could do to gain more visibility right now in this time of this year, right?
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think absolutely in a normal year, but like there are probably some folks that actually did try their best, maybe threw their hands up, as you said, and stopped a little short of the goal line, but they tried their best back in Q1 before, you know what, hit the fan to get all this aligned. Now, I think there's been a lot of change. And that's kind of what my question was, is like, would it be, you know, is there something that people can do around how their brand is positioned, the story, or even just utilizing tools like Live or Amazon Marketing Services? Like, those are types of things that maybe you can drop in now that might help salvage, I think, as we're going through the rest of the year. I hate to use the word salvage, but in some cases it probably is that.
It applies in some places. They're still, and kind of going back to, you hit on it with search and Amazon, you know, how your product is discovered and making sure Amazon could still not be a priority, right? There's going to be some companies that still consider it not a priority. And that's fair. If that's your strategy, that's fair. But you can't discount the fact that the marketing that you do off Amazon and the stories you tell, the people you reach through all the expense you do through marketing is getting funneled back, and product is being discovered through Amazon, either as a first point of search or what we call path to purchase. I think the last time I got a chance to speak to Amazon path to purchase, it was 83% of the time Amazon's on the path to retail purchase at some point. Whether they're doing review, whether they're checking your review, looking at price, trying to learn something about the product. Because, I mean, we all have experienced, you know, our favorite retailers these days are not necessarily what they used to be as far as service and information. And so I think people rely on tools like Amazon quite a bit more. So even if it's not what you're using for transaction or focus as a sales revenue as a company, you still need to dial it in and have it ready to go for the consumers that access your brand that way. So to hopefully answer your question, it's the prep around making sure that that's completely dialed, even if it's not a focus. And it sounds counterintuitive to the strategy that they may not focus on it, but you should have it ready to go, because you don't want to waste the expense across all the other things you're doing when the consumer is actually using that to either buy or learn about your product.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. That is gold right there. So moving through the last couple of questions that I had for you, Pattern is a solution for moving inventory, right? That's part of what you do.
Yeah.
That's obviously a loaded topic this year. I just had a couple of conversations about some pretty incredible things that are happening with brands that really have the best of intention, but are really just, this is a special year and people are definitely failing forward. They're still trying, but they're failing forward. It's like all they can do is their best. But tell me about kind of what your perspective is in terms of the best approaches to ensure products available to consumers, or that it's the product they're actually wanting. I mean, you know as well as I do, like people are basically mothballed spring, right? They're going to reintroduce it in spring 21. Like that's kind of where I'm getting at. Like, what's your take on that in terms of moving inventory and the consumer perception around that?
Yeah, it's a really good point. You know, there's for someone who loves, I feel like I'm a gearhead. I love new product, and I love seeing what's coming out every season. Talk to a lot of brands that have really scaled back what they plan to launch as new for spring 21. You know, and trying to focus stories in on core items that they may have. So I think there's going to be a lot less new, and really the initiatives that are new are going to have to be hyper focused. And hopefully if it's kind of like when you come to a new season and you've got 5 new stories and you're hoping 2 or 3 of them hit. When you come to the season, you have 2. You need both of those to hit. And whether or not those actually move and generate the revenue to create new franchises will be really interesting this spring. But I think what we'll see is a lot of focus on carryover product. The brands that have really strong carryover product, that have always had their core products that consumers love and know, and I think we know the brands who have those, and they can just keep selling those things all day long. I feel like they'll be able to move through those promotionally too, and through the seasons of, the visibility and access to those. And also when it comes down to search and visibility on Amazon, those are the products that are actually starting to rank up and have all of that organic visibility that the consumer can then access pretty readily. And it doesn't take as much expense to put it in front of the consumer. So I think strong carryover stories, they're in a good position. So some of our favorite long-term brands may be in a favorable position that way, whereas some of the new to market folks that we're launching in spring may be in a different position. The guys that are new for fall or potentially coming out next spring may have dodged a little bit of a bullet. But I think for the most part, you'll see a lot of carryover opportunity. I think still it comes down to overall planning strategy, especially in when it comes to our space. We have a lot of brands that we talk to that, again, it goes to that kind of wild west, let everybody sell it, or have a hybrid approach with, Amazon directly and 3P, is really being able to capture what the actual demand is for your product. And when you have a bunch of different entities buying 100 units, if you've got 10 entities buying 100 units for 100 unit demand, you've got way too much product in the marketplace for that demand. And it's working to get yourself down to a place where you can have visibility to the demand and have someone buying and planning for it, so you can quickly move on to the next thing as you plan through it. So I think people they get to the end of the seasons and they have retailers going, oh, hey, I've got too much product, I need to send it back. And then you find out that like 30 to 40% of their business is on Amazon, and they just overbought and they were hoping to sell it. But the guy down the street also does 30, 40% of his business on Amazon, and he overbought. And it's not necessarily that their brick and mortar wasn't successful. You're just taking back product because they all overbought to sell on Amazon. So if you've got someone who can dial it in, I think you'll see success on not necessarily feeling that burden at the end of each season.
And I do think there's a little bit of a tailwind here, because ultimately, if this was all still analog and we were all very much following the old playbook, it would take months, if not a year plus, to instigate some of these new things. But with data and the real-time nature of what you have access to today, it seems like you can actually make some changes, try some things and fail, but still also have a few things over here that worked. And you know what I mean? Like, it seems like you can turn the page a lot faster today. The
fail fast forward mentality is definitely out there. There's options, there's things you should try. There's things that honestly the tools and the things to fail fast forward on from an overarching expense standpoint aren't super impactful. You can check to see what kind of reach you can get as a brand and what programs work for you without really breaking the bank.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So I have to wrap up by saying our guest yesterday had a great one-liner, hoping for the best and then planning for the worst. Do you agree with that? And if so, can you offer your top 2, maybe 3 approaches on how our specialty business and brand leaders in our amazing audience here can really hedge their bets and drop the clutch to finish the year strong?
I don't know if I agree with that, actually. I think if you aren't planning for the best, you're actually planning to miss great opportunity. Like if you expect only to reach 50% of your sales velocity, then you would be planning only to build that much product, and you might miss out on, a lot of opportunity that's out there. So I think it still suits us to plan for best case scenario, but if you're going to plan for best case scenario, you need to plan for best case scenario with the intention of using everything available to you to get there as far as, and I'll keep going back to data and analytics, but it's out there. It can literally tell you exactly what's tracking, exactly what needs to be bought. A lot of times when we're running analysis for potential partners, a lot of what we're showing is like, here's your category. Here's the size of your business within the category. Here's what everyone else is doing in these products. And it's literally like an opportunity map for you. Like if you wanted to go and make that kind of shoe or that kind of jacket, or, it's there. And so I think the data and analytics is definitely there for people to plan for best case.
Anything that I'm missing here? You're such an incredible resource at such a critical time.
Oh, I still think, the holidays are going to be important. It's still going to be when people focus on, if you're like me, I'm probably not going to fall, even though I talked about all the early promotions and the business that might take. I'm definitely someone who is going to miss all the promotions when it was really cheap. And I'm going to be the guy first or second week of December, still, looking to do all my purchasing and remembering that ad I got served back, after Labor Day when it was 50% off, and going, well, I guess that's the sucker I am. But I think the biggest thing to realize as a brand right now is, as hyper-focused as we are on the US, is how much opportunity there is on other channels right now, and global channels, whether it's the Tmalls or the Alibabas or the Mercado Libres, and you just can make this list. And unfortunately, as we've kept our eyes just kind of on Amazon US, we have to understand that if we're not selling there as a brand and taking control of those channels, someone else is selling there and your product is there. How many conversations have we had with brands that go, oh, we don't do Amazon, and you type in their brand name and there's all the product, right? So it's not too soon to make sure that you have a strategy for global e-commerce and finding someone who can actually take that on for you. And that's really how Pattern structured themselves, is beyond US Amazon, is how are we going to take on global e-commerce for our brand partners. So it's as we go to Q3, Q4, I know it's super busy. Everybody's really occupied by that mindset of finishing the year strong, but as quickly as we can get to thinking about bigger picture, the better.
I love that. And I actually think this whole year because it's been a global pandemic, I think that we are, even as individuals outside of our business, we think more about what everybody's going through. This is not just a North American problem. And I love the way you're thinking, because we do have to do everything that we can to get through this. This summit is intended to provide support for that. It's also intended to provide inspiration and encouragement to widen the portal, right? And I think, if you're able to do that in a way where if you can get out of there's no way in hell I'd be able to do that, that mindset, because other brands are doing it. And it's actually a very opportune time. If you're going to have to change and modernize, why not put more groundwork in place? This actually could be the perfect time to do it. So where could my amazing audience learn more about Pattern?
It's really easy. It's just pattern.com.
That is easy.
Yep. Yeah, we'd be happy to run analysis for anybody who's interested and have chats, and got a lot of great colleagues that are specialists in the areas that they work in, and would be super excited to work with the outdoor specialty brands, because bottom line, it's the products that we use and we love, and no one loves talking about products more than when they actually use it, on a day-to-day basis.
This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much. It was great to reconnect. And I look forward to, staying in touch and talking with you more about, as you're bringing more specialty brands into Pattern. I would love to just stay in touch and keep our audience updated with you. As you can see, I have the amazing Kelly Ramirez here on the show. She is the founder and chief growth officer of Prismatic, and we're going to get into Kelly's background and what Prismatic does. Welcome to our summit here, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Kristin. I'm so glad to be here. I love getting the opportunity to talk to your audience and community, and there's so much happening right now in 2020. So happy to share the information that I have, and I'm excited to see the other sessions that you've done this week too. So yeah, I'll do a quick intro for Prismatic. So I founded Prismatic 2 years ago. We are a growth strategy firm, primarily focused in digital direct-to-consumer e-commerce growth. My background prior to that, I was at Google working with our top tier advertisers in the travel space, so fully digital. I did that for nearly a decade, aligned to the core growth of those clients, like clients we had, Expedia, Hotels.com, Orbitz, Travelocity, really enabling them to leverage their digital marketing spend most efficiently. And with those clients, they were spending, investing anywhere from $100 to $250 million a quarter. And so
Wow.
significant investments in digital channels, and that was 8 years ago now. So founded Prismatic because I saw that there was an opportunity to bring that knowledge and insight and really the methodology of growth to brands that don't necessarily have that capacity for investment, but do have a fabulous product and can leverage online and digital channels to truly connect with customers. And so our specialty areas are marketing analytics, enabling our clients to very clearly see and understand the data that they're working with, as well as what their customers and potential target customers are doing to be able to take advantage of that. Secondly, user experience and conversion rate optimization. So this is, I'm often saying, like, the most important thing for a digital brand is to keep that humanness front and center, because right now, our opportunity to connect with customers is through that digital experience, whether it be your website, your app, and we help our customers both understand the journey that they're traveling and improve conversion rates, which ultimately lead to increased revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part, customer acquisition. So leveraging paid media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads, and also being really mindful about marketing automation platforms like Klaviyo or MailChimp to really create a full funnel for customer acquisition and bring those great potential customers in and closer to your brand.
And so a lot of people, are probably just like super eager and waiting to hear what you have to say. And one of the things you're so great about, and honestly, one of the show we did together, which we'll have linked up for everybody to listen to, so you can, and it was recent, there's some gold in there. We talked for over an hour, I think, or close to an hour. So there's another like deep dive you can take with Kelly on the Channel Mastery podcast. But one of the things that she's gifted with is making this accessible to specialty brands, artisan makers who really believe so much in their product, the cause it's aligned with, the impact and expansion it can bring to the world, but maybe don't know how to navigate the waters that she's become an expert in. And what I feel so incredibly blessed, frankly, about is the fact that you bring the chops that you do from Google, but also the heart that you have for specialty and outdoor. So I just want to tell everybody, you're right in the right spot. So just know Kelly's going to share everything that is attainable to you running this specialty business and will, I think, boost you going forward. And ultimately, we're learning how to drive right now in a semi, and people like Kelly can help us when things calm down, drive a Prius, right?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Gosh, there's so much that we've learned so far in 2020. And yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. All right, let's start. So I'd love to have you explain the way you're working with your clients to enable them to deploy their data in a way that will help them see opportunities while avoiding challenges through the end of the year. I kind of feel like we're stepping through a bit of a minefield, but toward a really exciting outcome or opportunity.
Yep. Yes. So there's a couple of things I want to share here that we do that I think has really enabled our clients to be successful in this realm. And while I shared the kind of the third stage of the work that we do with our clients is on customer acquisition and on paid marketing and making sure we're attracting the right audience. All of that is for naught. Those dollars can be wasted incredibly quickly if you're not comfortable and have a clear understanding of what's happening with that traffic when it comes to your site and what's happening with the different segments of your audience as they're engaging with your brand through your different digital properties. So I'm glad we started here, Kristin, because analytics really, truly is the foundation of everything that is required for growth. So I'll kind of break it down into 3 steps of what we do and how we work with our clients in getting them up and running and really in the point of acceleration. So the first thing that we do is put together a roadmap, and that roadmap outlines sort of the progression of analytics maturity. I think there's, an eagerness and sort of a assumption, especially in times under great duress, where you're like, I have to do this now. I'm not where I need to be. Something needs to change overnight. And I would love to just remind everybody that it is a progression. Even the brands that you see, maybe seemingly had overnight success, there are pieces that they put in place over time to get there. So the first thing that we do is really level set and identify where is a brand in terms of being able to understand their analytics, and then where do we want to get them to go. If you think about like an X and a Y axis, on the X axis, we were starting at, OMG, we've got a lot of data, right? We have a lot of what we're supposed to be looking at right now. Where do we even begin to start? And then we move them towards actually like the storage and interpretation of a data. So potentially that's something like even things like getting your channels cleaned up in Google Analytics. Then we move towards the ability to do some business insights and have some business intelligence. So then we're able to pull out key insights for the business, including things like understanding your own baseline. And ultimately, where we want to go on this roadmap, where we take our clients, is to get to a state of predictive analytics. So then you have the tracking set up, utilizing tracking pixels. You've got the ability to really pull apart and segment your data. And then you can look at that and make decisions about what that means for the future. And so why is that important right now in 2020 and especially in Q4? We just don't know what's going to happen, right? Normally in a normal year, we're like, all right, it's Labor Day. We're now in September. Like you said before, we have our Black Friday plans. We have our Cyber Monday plans. We're hearing feedback all over the map. There are some brands that are saying we're going to start our Black Friday sales and Labor Day and run them through the end of the year. There are some brands that are completely saying we're going to opt out of Black Friday altogether because we can't really discount our products based on where we are. And so I think part of it is like taking away all the noise and creating this very clear roadmap for where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So it's still being intentional, even though we're being, we're fielding curveballs, right? We still have to be intentional. It's like, if we don't have that GPS set on a destination and we're looking at, are we staying on track with that? We could really end up like way off course if we're just being reactionary to everything that's coming in.
Yeah, so I think it's being really taking a very hard look at where you currently are in terms of being able to understand things like your traffic sources, your channel performance, new versus returning customer performance. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, but ultimately getting to a metric like customer lifetime value, understanding the profitability of your different customers. The way you get to that is not overnight. You need a set of data where you're reliably collecting information over time to then go back and analyze, and then have the number that you're aiming towards, and you can compare that then against the investments that you want to make. So I want to reassure everybody who's listening and watching that, start today. If you haven't started on this process already, you've got to get started, because it does take a while to at least to put some foundational elements into place. But it's a progress and process over time, and it's incredibly valuable. The more data you have, the more you can do with it, right? And then next thing is, and this is something we've been focused on, especially in 2020, is to get move toward a state of having end-to-end ownership of your data. So 2 very common challenges that I observe in the brands, especially outdoor brands, active brands that are recently entered into the direct-to-consumer area of growing their business, is siloed data. So, perhaps you're using multiple different platforms, and all of that data is sitting within those platforms. So for example, let's say you've got Klaviyo as your email provider. Maybe you've got Shopify or BigCommerce as your e-commerce platform. Then you've got Google Analytics and all of your individual marketing platforms. Mm-hmm. And really the goal for growth is to be able to get a holistic view of that. And then use that information to make decisions going forward. That siloed data and even like misalignment of things like attribution windows. Are you going to count a purchase of somebody who saw an ad or somebody who clicked on an ad? that leads to paralysis and uncertainty about where to go next. And we want to avoid that at all costs. So being able to de-silo that data, one of the ways that we are doing that is we're working with our clients to utilize things like BigQuery, which is a data warehouse, and build out instances where we can get all of our raw data in one place and then do queries to pull out key insights that we can then use to move forward. So I think the other thing that I've observed in working with clients this year is that there's been this huge bloom or proliferation of SaaS tools, right?
Oh my gosh.
Trying to plug in.
Speaking my language right now. And literally our dear clients are being just bombarded by salespeople with bright, shiny objects to build kind of a Miner's Shack marketing stack, which is not, tell us. We need this.
No. So in fact, it's creating a lot of issues because depending on who from within the organization, right, who has the information about what the overall objective goal is to grow the business, especially through direct to consumer, by plugging in a bunch of these different SaaS tools or individual standalone tools, it actually creates a lot more. You're trying to pass data through multiple different connectors, right? And if one of those fails and you have an unstable system, then you're back to square one. So, one of the things that we look to in order to resolve some of that is really, rather than trying to do a ton of different plugins, it's actually going back to basics. Can you build the stack? The ultimate objective is building a stack that allows you to seamlessly pass information back and forth. So, I think there's probably folks making decisions right now on what their 2021 e-commerce plan is going to be once they get through holiday. The biggest piece of advice here is to really ask questions about API capabilities, meaning can you seamlessly pass data back and forth between your platforms rather than needing to rely on a bunch of different plugins and connectors that ultimately create sort of like a toothpick and duct tape structure versus being able to actually deploy them as native platforms that can connect.
You don't want to build your house on toothpicks and duct tape foundations, folks.
Yeah. So I think then the main takeaway there is being really mindful about end-to-end ownership of data. So for leaders that are making those decisions, especially as we go into Q4, I would say I imagine there's a lot of urgency about what's our solution going to be right now, but I would caution this group to really keep that in mind, that you want to keep that data freely flowing and accessible. And the third piece related there is, having a single source of truth and ensuring that your marketing teams are on board to be able to know how to use those insights. So I talked a little bit about on the analytics side, that would be, we're moving our clients towards utilizing BigQuery, for example, solution, but being able to have a data warehouse and data tables so we can feed and push and pull the information that we need. On the UX side, making sure that everybody can see on the team and the people that are making key decisions that conversion funnel. Where are your customers flowing in your website experience? On the customer acquisition side, being really strategic about paid marketing and different stages in the funnel or the loop that you're appealing to your potential customers. At stages of the year, potentially Q1, you're wanting to really load the top of your funnel and look for a lot of new audiences that you can cultivate and begin to build into your community. As you're moving towards Q4, you're going to want to be using tactics like remarketing or being able to leverage your marketing automation tools to reach people that have purchased before, and you don't necessarily have to pay to reacquire them, but you want to put in tools for loyalty and repurchase.
Right. And are those things, I realize in a normal year, these are systems and processes that would have been built a while ago. Can you name maybe the top 2 or 3 that are important to look more into now? And I can even point folks to your website or make this script available to them so they can actually see the step-by-step. But some of them might be feeling like, oh, wow,
I don't have
what do I do now? I still need to make some adjustments right now.
Yeah. I think right now, if you don't, if the things that I'm mentioning resonate with you because you know that you do need to do them, but you don't have them in Q4, I would look at the tools that you do have available. And I am assuming every single brand has Google Analytics installed.
Yep.
And be focused on understanding the behavior of incoming traffic and their user experience. That's actually where we focus before we start to advocate for increasing ad spend or trying new advertising channels, is being very aware of what experience you're sending traffic into. So if what I'm mentioning to folks, if nobody has any of those tools, I would say where you need to start before you start to go and ask for $100,000 for holiday to be sending a bunch of traffic to the site, is take a couple steps back and really critically look at what customer journey you're setting up through the channels you have active, and then what you're asking your customers or your potential customers to walk through as a path to ultimately purchase something from your brand.
And I have to say, we actually teach that in the academy. We have a whole module dedicated to that with worksheets and a way for you to chart that, as well as a way to pull this information together so that the brand leaders that we serve in the academy can actually become the advocate of the consumer with the brand. Because right now, I think most brands, a lot of your brands and a lot of my brands have like a point of distribution VP, whether it's a sales VP who might have an e-commerce, not an assistant, but not an equal, right? Mm-hmm. And they might be like just legacy-wise really focused on wholesale, which of course we know is going to come back, is super important to specialty. At the same time, we have to advocate for the consumer. And that journey that you're talking about is so important to all of this. It's what brings all of us together to work toward the same North Star.
Yes. And I love the choice of your word of advocate, because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be. We had brands that weathered the storm, that this first wave of COVID, because we anticipate there's more coming, right? Yeah. After the first initial 2 weeks of, I think, consumer panic, those brands were able to return and deliver 5 to 6x year-on-year growth for 3 to 4 consistent months through their digital channels. And the reason they were able to do that is because they were so tuned into their core customer.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. And at a time when other brands, either are shuttering, filing for bankruptcy, kind of shutting down, and it almost feels like this, people are running around and saying, the sky is falling, or I don't know what to do, or throwing up their hands in desperation. At the end of the day, it all comes back to that relationship with the consumer. And in these times, your direct contact with the consumer are your digital channels and your digital experience. And so if I had a brand and I had a pot of $100,000 to spend wisely, the first place I would look is not advertising. The first place I would look is to dive incredibly deep into that user experience. And then you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck when you go out and do decide to do additional customer acquisition. So I can't emphasize that strongly enough. And I think historically, digital marketing or digital agencies, I think, have done a disservice to brands because there's been such a focus on spend, and really driving traffic as the key goal, when at the end of the day, it's profitability that should be your key goal. So while we're weathering some very unusual waters right now, at the end of the day, you have to keep that connection with your customer and your consumer and maintain that relationship. And if digital is where it will be for the foreseeable future, which is where all signs are pointing, I would highly advocate that energy be directed towards that relationship that you're building through your website or your app, wherever you're trying to meet your customers.
Right. I totally agree. This is great. And then also, Kelly really points out also just that's the lifetime value of the customer right there. Yes. You don't want them just coming in and leaving. That's the job for what I always love to call the vending machines that might be the marketplaces when they're searching for commodity goods. And we want to emotionally enroll them in our brand and really just give them such a great experience that they have reciprocity for us. And ultimately, that's about caretaking those who we have enrolled while enabling them to potentially grow our, audience. But right now it's about don't take your eye off that ball is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yes, and that you mentioned customer lifetime value. For us, for our group, that is our North Star metric when we work with our brands. Let's say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the advent of like return on ad spend or the ROAS metric was really important from an advertising and acquisition perspective. 3 years before that, everybody was looking at cost per click or how much it costs to bring somebody to your website. We have such an incredible wealth of data and information, and really unlocking growth is understanding the profitability of those individual customers at user level, if possible. And then, really using that customer lifetime value to make your decisions. And that could be, I think something that has been really phenomenal in the brands that do end up seeing some incredible growth is they're willing to lose volume at the expense of quality. And that, I think, really being aligned to what that quality looks like and where you can find that quality of user will only become more and more important.
Okay, awesome. And so we're going to spend the rest of our time kind of talking about the evolution of the consumer, because that is where all of us need to be focused. And every single week in the Academy, that's what we start with, is a report on that is made very, very relevant to the specialty leaders we're serving. But you had some great points in here. We just touched on a couple of really strong ones, but we know that consumer loyalty is a little bit open season right now. They've had to go through COVID and establish new day-to-day norms, get their needs met in new ways because they've had to. I mean, that's obviously why everybody's tethered to their browser and everything else. They've now had months and months and months to have this new behavior and preferences set, right? And so we're seeing that the loyalty that where we could win with them is to provide a great seamless experience and also have cause and ethics. But I also wanted to just bring it right back to that customer journey that Kelly was talking about. If you go through that and you really examine like how you can be remarkable to exactly the person you want to serve throughout that journey, you are actually going to be, I think, in a great position to win their loyalty, because you'll have opportunity to like really tell that story of, not only are we going to be a great, get you what you need and hopefully in a really convenient way, but this is who we are and you belong with us, right? We're your community. But I'd love for you to talk about the 3 points that you brought up in our rehearsal together around just what specialty brand leaders must know about the evolution of their consumer today.
Yeah. So, back to that. So this human point, one phrase that I think consistently resonates with people in conversations is the reminder that we are the same people online that we are offline. And so as we talk about the evolution of the consumer, I think really dialing into that and not, we're almost forced to go. I think we've been forced to accept or like come to terms with the fact that, previously, I think especially as like the outdoor specialty retail industry was evolving, one of the things that I think the industry was missing was the fact that, your digital really is an opportunity to be more human. And if you think about the ways that you might set up, a physical store for somebody to walk into, or a specific display, there's been so much thought and understanding about what a customer or consumer wants when they come into a store. There was an example that was shared. This was pre-COVID, but I think really relevant. And this is a larger organization, but REI, for example, we're seeing that, the significant majority of new customers that were coming into their physical stores were arriving with their mobile phones. Mm-hmm. They'd already done the research on the product that they wanted, and they were literally using the person that was on the floor to help them get there in a frictionless way. So they weren't spending hours searching through racks or trying to find their way down a path of aisles or trying to compare different products. They have a sense of what they're looking for. What they really want is their expertise to guide them to the ultimate right direction. So
it's so well said.
And I think it only becomes more true now, right? In that, because you don't have the opportunity to greet somebody at the front door of a store when they walk in. You do have the opportunity to greet them on your mobile site. your website, and even more so keeping in mind that those people are on mobile. But really, how do you, and it goes back to the customer journey. I think this is probably our theme for this conversation.
Yeah.
And, really thinking through, have you built that perfect mousetrap, that perfect, really compelling experience for somebody to travel through their tools that brands are using, such as, live chat. I think the most basic one that is really important is really using, and it sounds like you've got a guideline for folks, Kristin, but being able to use even a simple worksheet and map out what that customer flow looks like, get it down on a piece of paper, have the key stakeholders in your business, on your marketing team, those that are involved in e-commerce, or you loop them in to be involved in e-commerce, and take a critical look at what that path looks like. And I would encourage you to step back from thinking about it separately from a real life experience. Instead, put yourself in the customer's shoes. And, are you digitally putting like an end cap in front of somebody's path as they're trying to walk towards the register?
Right.
I very much encourage teams to do that. And that, we saw that there was a study that came out after the end of those first 2 months of COVID, and there was something like between 35 and 40% of people who hadn't even shopped online before that were now online. So we're just seeing this incredible spike of people too that, maybe aren't accustomed to that being their first outlet. And it's our responsibility as brands to make that as pleasant and seamless as possible, not only for a great customer experience, but at the end of the day, that earns you customers as well as incremental revenue.
And trust, I think.
And trust, right? Because you are putting, right, you're showing that you're prioritizing that user experience.
And their time is so valuable. That's also become, pairing what you're talking about, exactly what you're talking about, this journey, and bringing everybody in to work on this together with the backdrop of the evolution of the consumer. That to me is really where the academy is. Like, you can't have one without the other. It can't be like a set and forget in any way. And unfortunately, in some organizations, more so on the legacy side, not so much on the direct first side, but we're seeing a convergence of those because they all realize there's a channel strategy, not just their primary launch channel, that will get them to be this remarkable brand to their consumer. But ultimately, like, when they look at the journey and they aren't putting themselves in it, because all of us are experiencing the training and the day-to-day changes that we're going through with COVID as consumers. So I love your take there. Put yourself in the journey as you are today, and what your preferences are, and what you will tolerate, and what you will love, and kind of go from there and have everybody participate in that. I think that's so good. So good. It's great.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to last. Some of the resistance or challenge I've heard to that suggestion from brands is like, we don't have weeks to do that. It doesn't have to be a week-long exercise, right? Carve 2 hours out on a Thursday morning or Tuesday morning with your team and go through the pieces of what you're asking a potential customer to do to purchase one of your products. And I think also being aware of, back to the data and letting that lead your decisions in terms of what you're going to prioritize. There is an incredible stable of rich data that you can get to in terms of what people are responding to. In the previous podcast that we've done, I mentioned one of our favorite tools that has a free option, which is Hotjar. And that, you drop a pixel on your site and you're able to see things like heat maps, click maps. You can do video recordings. You can really see, what is actually happening, what is happening in reality versus what you think is supposed to happen on your site. And that's like the crux for brands that are actually getting traction here.
And I just want to, before we kind of go into my last question for you, Kelly, the other thing that you mentioned that I think is so important as we're sitting around this process together in our teams, and ultimately what we're doing is we're managing and moving into a change direction together. That's never easy. There are egos involved. And the more data you bring into that, the less personal people can take it. That's another really huge hack.
Huge. Yeah. And I think if I were to share like my biggest lessons in working direct with brands, which I've been doing now for 4 years, and I've been able to see teams that soar in the face of incredible challenges, and those that have everything lined up for them and they just can't execute. And it often comes down to this point is, are we, whoever the team is, allowing the ego or the need to report up or report down getting in the way of getting that objective done?
Right.
And it's such a simple thing, and I feel like we all learn it in the early days of business, or because it's a very common known thing. But it's amazing. It's been amazing to watch that, like, clear goal, clear vision, objective to lift all boats and just get this thing done. That type of attitude, especially in digital, especially in tech, and when you're working with different technologies, it's absolutely critical because the data is going to lead you to where you need to go. It's not about individual opinions. You can have your opinions, but you've got to set them aside in the favor of what your consumers are saying and showing you is actually happening in your business.
I love that. That should be, how when you write an essay or something and the last paragraph really sums up the whole thing, I always think that was it. As a former journalist, I always look at that. Okay, last question, and this wraps up everything. Hope for the best, plan for the best, but plan for the worst. Okay. Do you agree with that statement? And kind of finish out our conversation with your thoughts on that.
I'm going to say no, only two things. So I think that when I hear that, it feels a little bit like a huck and pray, like things could, and I think especially in 2020, like I'm dialing in from my house here in Bozeman. We just had one of the worst forest fires, wildfires close to town that anybody can remember in hundreds of years. The same is happening in California, Oregon, Washington, and impacting a lot of the recreation areas that we love, what we all depend on also for livelihoods. That stacked on top of a global pandemic, I think we have no way even right now to plan for the worst. So I try to avoid planning for the worst, but instead, recognize it isn't a huck and pray. It's that even in the face of all this uncertainty, we have a lot of tools and resources that allow for us in real time to be informed about our business path forward.
Yeah.
For us, for our clients, we're always focused on creating a map, setting goals based on the information that we have at hand, and then being willing to adjust as we move along that path. And it's not, you had mentioned set and forget. It's not that you put your Q4 plan, and maybe this is the biggest lesson for us all in all this. You don't put a Q4 plan in place on September 1 and then check your results on January 1st.
Yeah.
You've got to be incredibly dialed in to the information that you're getting about your business, the information that you're getting about your customers. And that is happening through analytics, through data, through the response that people are giving to your lifetime marketing campaigns. So I think it's about creating a map, setting your goals, and then being willing to adjust and not tying your ego or that end all be all to success. You also said, which I love, I've heard you say this a couple of times, failing forward.
Yeah.
It isn't going backwards, you're learning along the way. So it really is about creating this map and being bold and moving towards those goals, and then knowing you're always going to have to adjust. And at the center, trusting your customer, listening to the needs, and empowering your team to meet the goals that you've all set, being willing to adjust along the way.
Right.
And data.
Data.
And understand what your numbers are telling you and being willing to move in that direction. But before you can move in that direction, you've got to be absolutely certain that you can trust that. So you're not, wasting time asking questions or spending time in a gray area. Right. You're looking for some definitive answers so you can make decisions.
And what I just think this is great. And the last thing I'll say, which kind of I think wraps all of this up, is you can't keep doing the same thing because it's comfortable or it feels safe to you and expect a different outcome. So it's about, there's a level of surrender in here too. And that's actually what I love most about what you said is it's actually set the plan, work the plan, but the most important thing you do is get into the trenches with the plan as you're seeing it work in real time and learning from that. I feel like if the brands that pay attention on the level you're talking about right now can literally probably learn more about their target shoppers or consumers between now and the end of the year than they possibly ever have before.
Yes.
Which
And
would
yeah, and I would encourage, I think some of the brands that I most admire, and I've watched them like walk this path of growth, have setbacks, readjust, walk the path again. They also I think it's not about being tied to a specific number. And I know that I will probably get some people saying that's crazy. That's what I have to do. That's my job. I think a lot of things are completely off the table right now, right? And so to your point, Kristin, we should take advantage of this time to learn and prioritize that learning path. And what is the most important thing you need to learn about in the business, especially for e-com and digital, is your customer. Without them, you have no business. You can have the most bright and shiny marketing campaign that you've been working on for 2 years. You can have brand ambassadors that are the coolest and the most extreme. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't resonate with the customer and they don't understand the why of your product, and you're not making it easy for them to connect to you and easy for them to transact and get that product in their hands, it doesn't matter. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. Tell us where we can learn more about your business, Kelly.
Yeah, so I am trying to be more active on LinkedIn. So we'll be having, we've been doing a lot of sort of case studies, and we've got some writing coming as we come into the end of 2020. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find Prismatic, which is our business, and myself, Kelly Ramirez, on there. I'd love to connect and keep the conversation going with folks. And then our website is welcometoprismatic.com.
And it's an incredible company. So thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for your time today. We are going to pull all 3 of these interviews into a podcast, and they'll also be available to you on our YouTube channel going forward. And I just want to say a sincere, heartfelt thanks to you, Kelly, for being here today and wrapping up the summit. Even though there's a missing piece to the summit, we did have 3, and we will be getting you that 3rd interview with Ryan Riggs probably later today we'll let you know where on our Facebook page for Verde. Please visit verdepr.com to learn about Verde, channelmastery.com to learn about the Channel Mastery podcast and to subscribe, as well as verdepr.com/course and channelmastery.com/course to learn about the Multi-Channel Marketing Academy, which is opening on Tuesday. And I believe so much in this academy and the timing of it right now over the 8 weeks from the 28th until Thanksgiving break are some of the most, I think, clutch weeks we have between now and planning for 2021. And our goal is to get our students to Thanksgiving with as much of a plan and foundation as possible for Q1 of next year. We don't feel like we can say for 2021, right? No way. But we can say, know where you're going to the end of the year through Q1, possibly Q2, depending on the nature of your business. We want to help you get there. And we're so excited. We have tons of great resource-based content marketing to share with you. So keep your eyes on our Facebook page and our other channels and tune into that free content to get yourself ready for the opening of our cart on Tuesday. Thank you so much, everybody.